Yo, what's up everybody? This is Respawn Reaper or Dan, and today I'm going to talk about my review of the newly added game mode Gambit Prime to D2. So, I'm just going to preface this by saying I liked OG Gambit when Bungie gave us that free weekend the month before Forsaken was launched, or whenever that date actually was. I like PvE in Destiny more than I like PvP overall, so when Bungie announced what Gambit was, I was very intrigued to say the least. I'd be able to run around the map and slay everything I see, and overall I'd be helping my team win this new PvE VP mode. Awesome, I thought. I must have only played Gambit for that weekend. As time went on and Gambit became a permanent fixture of Destiny, my liking to it started to dwindle. There were more things wrong with the mode than there were right. At least that's how I felt, and I know a lot of you would probably agree with me on that. It didn't take me very long to realize that the entire tone of the match would be determined by whoever invaded first. Meaning that if your team was running around and collecting motes and someone from the enemy team decided to invade and took out all of you or 3 out of the 4 people in your fire team, it was going to become extremely hard to come back from a setback like that. Not to mention things like the Sleeper being as notorious as it was for a time, and then the meta transition to the Queensbreaker. Getting killed more than once from across the freaking map during the enemy team invasion was and still is infuriating. I think we can all agree on that one at least. And then there was the issue of actual players not doing what they were supposed to do in the Gambit game mode. I'm talking about things like picking up 10 or 15 modes and then just not banking them for whatever reason, or not killing the primeval envoys before DPSing the boss. All things that would seem otherwise obvious to the educated Guardian. This is all still a thing in Gambit, by the way. But I guess there's really nothing you could do about players who have no idea how to play the game mode at the end of the day. As time went on, Bungie started getting more and more feedback about the mode and the various things that were wrong with Gambit and what needed to be changed. Like balancing the ammo economy for heavy weapons and specifically altering the aim assist on the Sleeper. There are more examples, but you get my point. I'm laying all this out right now because Gambit Prime is truly an evolution of the OG Gambit, both in good ways and in some bad. Prime almost feels like what Gambit should have been from the get-go. Granted, I'm glad that they just added another mode in Prime and also kept OG Gambit as well. Gambit Prime is a welcome change up to the mode and feels tighter, more condensed, and overall more fleshed out than Gambit ever really. And coming from someone who favors PvE content over PvP and didn't really like Gambit as a whole after the initial honeymoon phase wore off, this is nice to see and it's nice to play really. This time around, the rules are ultimately the same, however, it's only 1 round long technically. It might not feel like that at times, but we'll get to that a little later. Some things have been changed and tweaked. For instance, the game is still about melting your team's primeval before the enemy team does the same to theirs, but this time you have to take out the envoys before you can even think about DPSing the boss, since you'll have an immune shield until you, well, take out the envoys. This is a great change in my opinion. It actually adds mechanics to the mode. Now, they're not really like raid mechanics by any stretch of the imagination, but it actually gives you something else to do other than aim and hold down the trigger at the primeval and avoid dying. It forces you to move around the map and hunt down the envoys so that you can actually win the match. There's a grand total of 3 envoys that spawn that you need to take down before you can start the DPS phase of the encounter. The first 2 envoys are going to spawn relatively close together, with the 3rd spawning in a different location on the map, but the 3rd location is ultimately predictable once you play about 2 matches of Gambit Prime. They're all marked by a nifty little red targeting icon, so hunting them down is not a big deal and everybody can find them pretty easily. Now, once you kill that 3rd and final envoy, there's going to be this little pool of light on the floor where it died called the Well of Light. This Well of Light gives you the Primeval Slayer buff that stacks based on how many envoys you killed leading up to the DPS phase. This lets you do increased damage to the boss, but the buff only lasts for about 22 seconds, so act fast. And bear in mind that you do have to stand in the Well of Light so you can damage the Primeval during the DPS phase. Something else to keep in mind is that if the enemy team is well coordinated enough and knows what they're doing, it is that during the first DPS phase of the Primeval, there is in fact a damage cap that you can inflict on the boss, so you won't be able to utterly melt and one-face him after the first batch of envoys. Bungie probably did this so that matches wouldn't be like 5 minutes long and then that's it and it's a loss for you, but that introduces the issue of teams totally melting the Primeval after the 2nd phase with unbelievable ease. Something's probably going to have to be done here so that we all don't feel cheated in that moment. I don't know what, but something should probably be done. And to be clear, I'm not saying nerf anything into the ground, but, you know, maybe some balancing to that encounter loop or whatnot. But moving on from there, once you take out all 3 envoys, then you step into the Well of Light and start to damage the boss, and you could really just, you know, at that point lay on some real damage, super as heavy, whatever it takes, just take that thing down. And something to note here real quick is that the Wardcliff coil was given a staggering 160% buff in PvE with the last patch. At least I think it was that high. And at the moment of writing this, I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, like the 1000 voices giving all of your weapons a 25% damage bonus while it's equipped. So if you use things like the Rally Barricade on the Titan or the Lunafaction boots on Warlocks, the damage output is going to be insane when using the Wardcliff. Now, onto the topic of the actual primeval boss fights themselves. I want to talk about how long they might feel, like I mentioned earlier, if you're playing against a capable team, so let me just explain that a little bit. Let's say you already went through the 3 envoys in order to begin the DPS phase, and you even deal a decent amount of damage to the primeval, using up your supers and some of your heavy ammo and all that good stuff. The invading mechanic still applies to all of this, obviously. In fact, if you get killed by an enemy invader, it'll heal the primeval a pretty decent chunk, completely negating all the damage that, or at least most of the damage that you just dealt. And this comes as a surprise to literally nobody if you've ever played Gambit. So you went through the envoy, stepped into the well, and now you and maybe one other member of your fire team are dead at the hands of an invader, healing the approximately halfway back to its normal health, maybe even a little less, but enough to feel that like you just wasted your heavy for nothing or wasted your supers for nothing, which you really just did. The DPS phase ends, and now you and the rest of your fire team need to run around the map again, hunting down the envoys all over again. But time, one of your teammates decides he wants to invade and racks up 2 or 3 kills, healing the enemy primeval a significant amount also. You see where I'm going with this? Now, for sake of argument, let's just say this all happens yet again, but now you're in the 3rd phase, and the 3rd phase of the DPS, and you and 1 or 2 of your teammates gets taken out again, and it just rinses and repeats. The primeval will be healed, you DPS it, you run around, you take out the envoys, you know, somebody else invades, takes out some of the enemy guardians, heals their primeval, and it just stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks. I've had this happen to me a bunch already, and it's really only when people on both teams know exactly what they're doing. Now, I'm not necessarily saying this is good or bad, but it's something that the hardcore will no doubt take note of, especially if you're going for the new Pinnacle machine gun 21% Delirium. So just be aware of that loop you may or may not fall into depending on the people you're playing against. So moving on to something very big for Destiny in general are the all-new armor sets introduced in Season of the Drifter. Bungie added the new Reaper, Sentry, Collector, and Invader armor sets now that will give you special buffs according to the role that you choose to play as in Gambit Prime. The Reaper armor set is really just supposed to run around the map and take out everything that he possibly can to make it easier for his fellow Guardians. The Sentry is tasked with guarding the bank itself and taking out invaders from the enemy team. The Collector should be running around the map and picking up all the motes that are on the ground so that you can send multiple blockers to the other side. And a really cool feature that I like about the new blockers is that if you send over 2 or more blockers at one time, you will start to siphon motes off the enemy team's bank. They don't go into your bank, but it takes them away from the enemy. I really dig that a lot, and it totally encourages players to actually play the objective. And lastly, we have the Invader set, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Jump through the portal and take out as many enemy guardians from the other team as you can. While playing through a match of Gambit Prime, you'll notice that if you want to, you can play whatever role that you like at any time you like, but you only receive the synths that you need to craft more of the armor sets by doing the specific tasks in-game that are related to that respective armor set. I really like what Bungie is doing here with the new armor sets. They give you more of a purpose while playing through a Gambit Prime match, and hopefully they keep this trend going and introduce more and more armor sets in the future, which I think is more than likely to happen, honestly. So, in closing, the Gambit Prime game mode as a whole feels a lot better than OG Gambit ever did in my opinion. The fat has been trimmed and the mode doesn't feel like it's dragging on anymore. There are clear objectives you have to accomplish in order to win the match, and the new weapons they added as a part of Prime are really cool and have brand new perks to the game. So if you're interested in Gambit Prime as a whole, I definitely think it's worth, trying out, jumping in, seeing what it's all about. You can earn the new armor sets, get the new weapons, and I've been having a really good time with it lately. So until next time, guys, those are my thoughts on Gambit Prime, and I'll see you in the next one.
You've weaponized your light. Cook that primeval. Drifter's hungry. Yours. Invaders out. You'll get them next time. You lost the lead. You're in the lead. Take down that primeval, and this Gambit's yours. Portal's up. Go take him out. You've lost the lead. Burn that primeval down. Find them before they find you. You've weaponized your light. Cook that primeval. Drifter's hungry. The lead's yours. Invaders off the field. Allies headed to the other side. Your light's supercharged! Turn up the heat on that primeval. Portal's up. Go take him out. Invaders off the field. Invading. Invader on the field. Careful. Make that primeval eat your light. Invaders out. You'll get them next time. Portal's up. Go take them out. Light readings off the charts. Tear the primeval to pieces. Your allies invading the other side. You're being invaded. Find them before they find you. Yeah! Hey, you didn't start that fight. You finished it. 1 minute. Make every shot count. Your light's supercharged. Turn up the heat on that primeval. You've got style, brother. Portal's ready. Go say hello.
Well, that was fun.
See, the Vanguard don't appreciate